In this video, we are going to learn how to build layouts in Flutter and Dart. There are some layouts in Flutter that are considered layout widgets. They are background or invisible widgets. You will not see them on the screen unless you color them. And the main layout widgets that we'll focus on in this first part of the series is row, column, container, and center. So row layouts, they take an array of children and they have an alignment argument. And the main thing that a row widget does is that it arranges its children horizontally, its children being other more expressive widgets like text and image. The row widget does not scroll on default. The column widget, it takes an array of children as well. It also has an alignment argument, but the column widget arranges its children vertically, and it does not scroll. The next widget is the container widget. The container widget gets its maximum constraint from its parents. It can only grow as big as its parents. It takes width and height, where width and height is specified. It takes the size of its child if no width and height is specified. The center widget centers its children. It takes width and height factor, multiplies the dimensions of the child with this factor in order to determine its width and height. So for example, if width factor is 2 and the length of the child is 10, then the center widget's width would be 2 times 10, 20. Okay, so I've opened up VS Code, which is a code editor I'm using. You can use any code editor to follow along. I've run a couple of commands. The first one is Flutter create and then the name of your app, and then Flutter run to run the app. I've done some basic cleanup of the demo app that comes with Flutter, so there's nothing much going on here as you can see. It's just the scaffolds and that's it. So we're going to actually try and create a few boxes and arrange them in rows and columns, and also understand what a center widget is and what a container widget is. For a start, we're going to start with the row widget. There we go. Row takes children, which is probably its most important parameter. We are going to just give it a couple of text children, which I'm just going to call 1. Save and then hit R in the command to auto reload your app, and you can see in the corner here 1, 2, 3 really squeezed together, taking up this little space. So my goal with this tutorial is to have the text centered in a box and have the boxes arranged in a row for the first step. So how do we get this text widget centered on the row? First, I think we need to give it a style parameter. And let's first give it a font size. Let's just make it large. Font size. Yeah, font size maybe 40. I'm just going to copy this and put it in all the rest. So just a moment. Oh, yeah, I forgot to copy the comma. Save and press R. So now you can see them, they're much bigger, but there's still no division. So how do we turn this text into? We'll need to wrap it in a box. We need to wrap it, and we need to give whatever is wrapping it a background color. You can click here, use this assistant, and you can just wrap with widget. So which widget are we going to wrap this number 1 with? So let's take a moment and think with me here. I'm going to go with a container widget for this. The container, if you hover over it, you can get what it takes. It has a padding, it has constraints, it has height and width. So we're going to give it a color first of all so you can see it. Okay, so a container is like a div if you're familiar with CSS and HTML. It's just a border around your elements. If a container has no children, it will take the size of its parent. It will be as large as the screen in this case. If it has a child, it will just wrap itself around a child, which is... So if you want to give a little bit of room between the text 1 and the container. We'll need to supply the container with width and height parameters. So maybe I'll just call this, give it 130 and height, I don't know, 100. And then let's see that. Yeah, so now we have a box that has a text, but the text isn't at the edge. This doesn't look nice. So you can press Shift, Command or Alt F to auto format your code, because Flutter's whole tree structure, nested widgets thing can end up looking really scary if you don't format it correctly. Okay, so we have achieved this with box 1, but we still need this text to be in the center of the container. So how do we make the text come to the center of the container? So I'm thinking we could drop the text again in a center widget. And let's see what happens then. Yeah, perfect. It's right in the center. So just to recap to understand what we've done, because we are just going to copy this onto the other boxes. What we've done is we have created a text widget with a text of 1 and given it a large font size so that we can see it. We've wrapped this text widget in a container first of all, so we could create a visual background element to it. And this, as we mentioned before, this layout widgets are usually called invisible widgets, because as you would not have seen this border if we did not give it a color or background image. You would not have known its size, its width, its height if it has no color or no visual element to it. We have this, and we added a container to it, gave it a width and a height and a color in order to see it. So we're just going to do the same. I'm going to just delete these 2 text fields over here. You can also press Shift Option and the down key to copy paste things super quickly. So this would be the second one, and this would be the third one. Save, press R in there. There we go. So as you can see, this is laid out in row formats. Now there's a couple of ways you can create space between these containers. The first is you can use something called a sized box to create some space. You just type it here, sized box, and then you just give it, you have to give it a width or a height. In this case, I think we want width, let's say 8. Save, this needs a comma. Yeah, and you can see it creates a gap, so you can copy paste. As you can see, it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and you've created a gap using size box. That's one way. There's also the padding you can use to create space, say from the top and the side and whatnot. So let's just remove all the size box. There are just 2 over here for now. You can wrap the container in a padding. In this case, if we save that and then you press R, you see that it has padding all around, which looks nice. So we are going to repeat that process for the other. Hover over the widget and this little yellow head will pop, and it has a lot of amazing shortcuts and options to make things easy. So like so, and just repeat it essentially for all the other ones. Where is the last one here? Yeah, and then you save it, Command Shift F to make it pretty, and then R in the terminal. There you go. So you have 1, 2, 3 perfectly spaced, nicely spaced widgets. You can, of course, you can increase the edge insets to, you can make this, let's say 20, and then save it and run R, and like so. So that's, I think so far we've covered container, center, padding, size boxed, and row. What's left would be the column widget, but before we go there, let's see what other things the row can do. When you hover over it, it will give you, so it takes a main axis alignment and a cross axis alignment and a text direction. Okay, so let's see what that does. The default is at start, so let's try center. We'll center everything. So main axis alignment dot center will center its children along its main axis. For the row, the main axis is horizontal and the cross axis is vertical. So I just reduced the sizes of the container, the width and height of the container, the width specifically And I've reduced the font size just so that we can actually see the effect of the main axis alignment variables methods on this. So as you can see now that it's on space between, there's a much more dramatic effect because now you can see more clearly what's happening. Where was it? Here. So if we do space around, save, press R in the terminal, you'll see now it's taken all the extra space and spread it around all the containers, all the boxes in there. So if you do main axis alignment.start, the boxes come to the start. If you do .end and save it, press R in the terminal to reload it. They pack themselves to the end, to the edge of the window, the screen size. So even if we expand this, they'll still stay there. The properties of main axis alignment and cross axis alignment borrow from Flexbox. They seem similar to me to Flexbox. So if you are somebody who's familiar with CSS, I think this would be pretty easy to pick up and understand. And if not, I will link to a video by someone else on YouTube who already has a short little tutorial on Flexbox that you may find interesting or might help you pick it up better. But when it comes to Flutter, I think the best thing you can do is actually sit down and read the documentation, which I will also have linked in the description below. Okay, so now let's change this row to a column and just see what happens. Save it and then run R. Now because you have main axis alignment.end, the boxes, let me just expand this. The boxes will go to the end because of your main axis alignment.end. It's on the main axis alignment, but it's completely switched from the row because a column's main axis or its natural direction is vertical and its cross axis would be now the horizontal one. So it's really the same thing as the row one. Same stuff. If we remove this is the default. If we remove this, there should be no difference to the way it is. Yeah. So I think that's it for the row and column. So these are the basics you need to get started with the layouts in Flutter. Just understand that rows arrange their children horizontally by default. Columns do the opposite by arranging its children vertically by default. And you'll be good to go. The rest is just practice and more practice. So I'm going to refactor this code and come back so that I can explain container and center independently of row and widget. Back to the container widget. I've removed everything. It's just this boring layout widget returns a container. The only defect thing I've defined is the color for the container. Colors, I've given it a color. As you can see on this side of the screen, the container takes all the space it can get because the container, if it has no child, will fit itself to its parent. In this case, the parent is the screen. And if it has a child, it will fit itself to its child. It will be super small. So if we give this a child as before, we just give it a text child that says something. Save it and press R. You see that the container, I don't even know if you can see that. The container is this one over here, so small, yeah? It's hugging the child, it's wrapping the child. Hence why I said it behaves like a div for CSS. The other thing is if the container has no child, but has a specific width and height, it will take that specific width and height, change this and make it a center widget. A center widget does not have width and height and it does not have the color. None of this is going to work. So if you want to know super quickly what parameters a widget takes, you just hover over it again. I know I mentioned this before. So a center widget just takes width factor and height factor. But these are interesting parameters. It's not the same thing as a width. It's not the same thing as a height. So you won't see anything over here. The center, you can't color it, you can't give it anything. It just centers its kid, its child. And it takes one child. One child can be a row that takes many children or a column that takes many children. So the center widget would normally, if given no other parameter, would normally center its child. As you can see, the text is centered. But if you give it this parameter, the center widget's own dimensions change. So yeah, it would center its child within itself, but itself will not be as big as the screen itself would be its child's width times the width factor of 10. So if the child's width is 2, it will be 20, and if the child's height is 2 also, and then the height of the center would be 60. So the child will be centered in a box that's 20 width and 60 height, and then it will be put in the center. So that's really it for the center and the container and the basic widgets for layouts. So if you like this video, please like it so that other people who are also trying to learn Flutter layouts can see it in their feed. And there'll be a part 2 to this, so if you're interested in that, turn on notifications so that you're notified when the next video comes out. And see you next time.